Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson says he wants to be traded, but we don't think he's going anywhere. We got all that and much more on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, football fans? And welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL, your daily 30-minute podcast, bringing you everything you need to know around the National Football League, covered all the big stories and more here. As a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget, you can subscribe and follow for free on YouTube wherever you get your podcasts. We are your hosts on this lovely Tuesday. It is David Harrison at dharrison82 over on Twitter, and myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola. On today's episode, we're taking a look at a couple of different quarterbacks here. Brock Purdy, apparently the leader in the clubhouse for the San Francisco 49ers. So we have our good friend, John Lund from John Lund Unleashed, Bay Area Sports Talk podcast, who is here to help break all of that down. We'll also take a look at Aaron Rodgers and what it won't take to get him up out of Green Bay. But first of all, David, we're here to talk some Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson putting the tweets out there saying that he requested a trade on March 2nd. This is how you do things when you don't have an agent. You go to Twitter. Well, that trade hasn't happened. And David, I don't believe the trade is going to happen. I still think he's going to be a Baltimore Raven in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that writing has been on the wall the entire time. The Ravens knew it when they went ahead and put the non-exclusive franchise tag on him and said, you know what, go on out there and find out what the open world has for you and find out just how green the grass is on the other side of the fence. And then when you're ready and you're satisfied, you can come on back home where we are going to take care of you to the best of our ability. And then we'll just continue to play football. And it's one of those situations where you have like the personal relationships between people, but then you also have the business relationships between people. And I think that one of the reasons it's advantageous, for players to have agents and there's so many layers to this type of a conversation, right? And do agents really have the player's best interest at heart? And are they really looking to and all these other things? There's a lot of layers to this thing, but I think at the root of everything, when you are the person, talk about the man in the arena, right? When you are the man in the arena, it's really hard to kind of step back and take out the emotional side of things. And that's really where the negotiations and the contracts have to come from, because you're dealing with billionaire owners and even general managers who some of them more and more are former players. But for the most part, these are financial gurus or they're businessmen or whatever. They're not down there putting the blood, sweat, and tears in. And it's kind of the age old story of like the guys that are bleeding in the dirt don't necessarily get the best, I don't want to say care, but almost maybe consideration from the people calling the shots outside the battlefield. But as an agent player, you're now trying to blend both of these things, and the other side of the conversation is not willing to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea of having the representation is to be the buffer, right? To be the person that's going to be there and get ahead on some of this PR stuff. I mean, the idea that you had however many teams, more than it should have been, that effectively came out and said, no, we're not pursuing Lamar Jackson on that non-exclusive franchise tag, which started to bring up all of the blacklisting questions and all these other things. You couple that now, or not even couple, right? Because this is a group of things now. So you have that. You group that up with the sort of Twitter kind of, representation of himself, talking about the $133 million deal, the, guarantees, things like that. Now say that he requested a trade 25 days earlier than the tweet that he puts out. And then, of course, now he's doing kind of all these little like viral marketing things too that started to come out with the mobile gym thing. He's like putting his, links at the end of that thread about come and follow me on this, that, or the other. And so it's kind of this weird sort of group or conglomeration of things that maybe make the rest of the NFL go, ooh, I don't think I want to deal with that. You know what I mean? And so I think that might be another reason why I'm so confident he ends up back in Baltimore in 2023.
Right. I mean, honestly, and that's kind of what I've been thinking about here the last couple of weeks. And Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens did a really great job. I actually wrote an article for one of the Sports Illustrated Fan Nation sites I write for about his episode talking about this Lamar Jackson situation with Ken Francis. And is he or is he not contacting teams as a representative of Lamar, even though Ken is an uncertified NFLPA, he's not an agent, bottom line,
Right.
or not. And then like right after Lamar says, no, this is all a lie, Ken's not doing this. Boom, that home portable gym video with his business partner Ken, suddenly that name comes up again, is dropping in. And Kevin basically was talking about saying, is this just the biggest publicity stunt ever? But at the end of the day, like every time Lamar does this, don't be wrong, he's at his supporters, and I hope he gets his bag. I hope he gets everything he's after, because he's a human being, and I want him to achieve his dreams, just like I want everybody to achieve their dreams. But at the end of the day, like the NFL, basically, it looks like they came together. I'm going to stop shy of saying collusion because that requires evidence. But they basically came together and were like, look, we don't like that this player is representing himself and is after all this other stuff, and there's no buffer like you just mentioned there. And that was kind of the point, was to kind of say to other players, like, this isn't going to work, guys. But now Lamar is helping them. Like everything that Lamar is doing, he hasn't like torpedoed his reputation, but we're going to talk about the Aaron Rodgers situation. It's somewhat similar. Like, you're not helping your own cause by doing all the things that you're doing. You're really just kind of tarnishing your own. Like a week ago, I was saying this is a former MVP quarterback. How is nobody interested?
Right.
And now with all this other craziness going on, it's kind of like, okay, I don't want to say I get it now, but it's harder to defend you at this point.
That's the thing. Look, there is absolutely no doubt about it that I hope that Lamar Jackson gets his contract. He gets his cash. He gets his money. He gets his cheddar. He gets his Skrilla, however you want to say it. I hope that he absolutely gets every bit of his lettuce and that he gets to deserve all of it, or he gets to enjoy all of it. But right now, it's starting to get a little bit hard to make the argument in his favor, thanks to sort of the theatrics that have come from all of this. But you still hope that it happens. Let's entertain the idea. If you are an NFL franchise and this news comes out, right? The non-exclusive franchise tag was up there, but now you see the trade requests that came through as a part of the March 2nd sort of deal. You see Harbaugh at the owners' meeting kind of be pretty casual about this, if we're being honest. Yeah. Are you making a phone call, or are you kind of staying away from this?
I mean, I look at it like this. If you don't have a franchise quarterback, I don't know how you're not at least having the conversation.
The call. Absolutely.
Right. And I made this point on Locked On Bucks. I made this point on Locked On Commanders, because neither team has a surefire franchise quarterback. They both have young quarterbacks, or youngish quarterbacks, at least, that they think could be the franchise quarterback, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But neither of them, you can't just look at these quarterbacks and say, boom, that guy is going to lead us into a Super Bowl window for the next 5 to 10 years. You just don't have it. So if you're not making that call, you're almost being negligent in your duties as a general manager, head coach, whatever role you have inside that organization. Now, Washington's just a little bit different, because they're already doing these contracts they're signing this offseason a little bit weird because of the whole Dan Snyder situation and contractually delaying some of these bonus payouts so that Dan isn't the billionaire who's forking over the dough. But, outside of that, like kind of a little bit of a stipulation, which I'm sure Lamar, if you're willing to give him all the money, Lamar will take it in December and not take it in April. You know what I mean? I don't understand how you're not doing it. Again, the only reason these teams aren't doing it is because they're trying to prevent this rise of players representing themselves, especially big time, because nobody cares about Jacoby Brissett doing it. But Lamar Jackson is an MVP caliber quarterback. We don't want him doing it.
Trying to get a fully guaranteed deal when you've only got 2 quarterbacks in the NFL that have gotten legitimate, fully guaranteed deals, and they're Kirk Cousins and Deshaun Watson. And you want to be able to call those things outliers. But if a player agent is able to come in and negotiate himself into a fully guaranteed contract, the NFL changes as we know it. That is absolutely a big part of it. And just to kind of highlight this too, Lamar Jackson times the tweet so that it goes out when Coach Harbaugh is at the table with the media around him at the owners' meeting. Harbaugh just kind of smiles, plays it off. The cool dude he usually is. So we're going to be very, very interested to see how all of this plays out. But I think it's going to play out with Lamar Jackson still wearing some purple in 2023. Lamar Jackson might not be on the move, but one quarterback feels like, or one team must feel like they can't get rid of their quarterback quick enough. How is everything going with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers? We're going to break all that down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel. With the NCAA tournaments heating up, there's no better time, no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now FanDuel is offering new customers a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So you can go big, go aggressive, and if it doesn't work out, they're going to give you bonus bets back so you can build that bank back up. There's a lot of B's in there. Hopefully your bets are A's at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Sign up today to claim your no sweat first bet. And if you're worried about getting that opening deal and then getting nothing afterwards, I'll tell you right now, as a FanDuel user, FanDuel is always giving current users special deals as well. So don't you worry about that. You can wager on everything at FanDuel, from money lines, point spreads, who's going to cut down the nets at the end of these tournaments. You can bet on all of it on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel.
All right, everybody, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On NFL. As always, we thank you very much for making us a part of your day and the first listen of your day every day here on the show. While Lamar Jackson doesn't look like he will be going anywhere anytime soon, the Green Bay Packers starting to feel like they can't get rid of Aaron Rodgers quick enough. Trey Wingo breaks the news. Bam, Aaron Rodgers going to be on the move to the New York Jets. Everybody kind of panics. Nothing happens. Then Aaron Rodgers comes out of darkness. He goes on to the Pat McAfee show and says, I want to be a Jet. I don't know what the holdup is. Obviously, that causes everything to recalibrate yet again. So we get the owners meeting. Interviews on Monday. The Packers general manager effectively saying it might not even take a first to get him up out of Green Bay. David, has this... I'm going to ask the obvious question to set up the obvious answer. Has this gone perfectly to plan for Green Bay?
I don't think this has gone perfectly planned for anybody.
Anybody.
Because Aaron... I don't know, man. I mean, Aaron Rodgers comes out of his retreat and says that, essentially he went into it thinking that everything was great with Green Bay, comes out of it, and all of a sudden there's all these reports that they want to get rid of him. Listen, that's not news. That's not new to Aaron Rodgers. Like you know what's going on here. You know how this is unfolding. And the funny thing is he kind of sees all the memes and the tweets and all this other stuff. Like, if anybody wants to believe that Aaron Rodgers is not in tune with what people are saying about him, they just don't understand how this guy's mind is working. Like, he sees all the Brett Favre comparisons, yet he's still going down that exact same path that Brett Favre went down. And with the New York Jets, it's just such a weird scenario, because really nobody has leverage, but because nobody has leverage, someone's going to get all the leverage. It's just, we're in this just never ending staring contest, because we know it's going to happen. Like, Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing for the Jets. The only thing we need to figure out is how much of Aaron Rodgers' contract is going to New York, how much is staying in Green Bay, and whether or not A-Rod is going to take up Joe Namath and wear number 12. Like, that's really all that's left. Like, there's no situation where, in Jets media, people John Butchko, I wouldn't blame you if you get close to the NFL draft. You're like, look, do the Jets need to look at drafting a quarterback in this situation? Because it's a good question to talk about, at least. But at the end of the day, even if we get to draft weekend and this hasn't gone down yet, the Jets are not drafting a first-round quarterback, second-round quarterback. You know why? Because they're getting Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
The problem here is they can't agree on the trade.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they can't agree on the trade is the Packers are going, you have no leverage. You need a Hall of Fame quarterback. We have a Hall of Fame quarterback. And just going, yeah, dude, but you have no leverage. The dude went to a darkness retreat and came out claiming to be surprised by your hatred of him. And you got Jordan Love. So, and A-Rod is just, I don't even know what he's doing with his time off, to be honest with you, but he's just sitting back chilling, saying, when can I start learning the Jets playbook? You know what I mean? And this kind of came to me. I almost wonder if Green Bay is dragging their feet as long as they can to keep Aaron Rodgers from getting his hands on that playbook. But the way the NFL works right now, he probably had that playbook in the darkness.
He's probably got it. There are so many people listening or watching this show right now that could go download it if they really wanted it. It's not that hard to find. But I do think that there is something about that, right? Like, do you drag your feet as an organization just to make it more inconvenient on the guy that's effectively screwing your organization, right? That's effectively putting you in a bad position. Now, thankfully, you got a guy that you like a lot in Jordan Love, and you've been able to do all that, and you're going to be able to walk out with some draft picks here. But at the same time, if you're the Jets, and if you just had the Packers general manager tell national media, no timeline on the Aaron Rodgers trade, but hoping it's soon, and it doesn't necessarily take a first round pick, you're ecstatic. you are ecstatic because at that point, Green Bay has whatever leverage that they might have believed that they've had. They just cut themselves off at the knees by going out and basically publicly saying, here's the price and we can't get it done soon enough. And so hopefully this happens soon. Hopefully this isn't a draft day trade situation. You know what I mean? Aaron Rodgers, no matter what.
Anticlimactic breaking news of draft weekend ever.
I mean, this is so but crazy. It will be a relief.
It'll be a relief. Absolutely. Like NFL Network, their first 72 hours of free agency frenzy coverage was all about when is the Aaron Rodgers news going to break? We're 2.5 weeks into the new league year almost and it's still not done. Like, this is ridiculous. You know what I would do if I was Robert Saleh, honestly, just to have fun with this, because remember, Robert Saleh comes from the same coaching room as Mike McDaniel. So you have to believe that Robert Saleh has somewhat of a sense of humor. Like, you can't work with a guy like Mike McDaniel on a daily basis and not have at least some sort of sense of humor, right? I would leak to my favorite Jets media person that we're about to call Lamar Jackson. That we're considering backing out of the A-Rod deal and call Lamar Jackson, because that would just really send everything. Because then you're talking about, is A-Rod going to Baltimore? And that's definitely not happening. So
right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, if you're going to play the public negotiation game, then play the public negotiation game and get it done. Now, we also know that the Jets have said that they're completely focused on, Aaron Rodgers and all of this stuff. But man, I would not be able to pivot fast enough if I was the Jets organization and saying, oh, never mind, that's our guy over there. And then start this whole process in a public forum to get this all moving ahead.
Yeah, I wonder if Zach Wilson's the hot potato here. I wonder if they're talking about draft capital, and the Jets are saying, you know what, instead of that third, we'll give you Zach Wilson, and the Packers are like, hold up, man.
No, thank you. We appreciate it, but you can send him back to Provo. All right, we go from one quarterback that's going to be traded, or that's not going to be traded, to another quarterback that is going to be traded, to another quarterback who, it seems, his team, when it comes to Brock Purdy, the San Francisco 49ers, can't wait to get him out on the field. We're joined by John Lund of John Lund Unleashed, some Bay Area sports talk on Brock Purdy being the favorite in the clubhouse and what that potentially means, speaking of quarterbacks on the move, for Trey Lance as well. Got that coming up for you as we continue on to wrap up today's episode of Locked On NFL.
And we're doing that thanks to our friends over at Built Bar. We're talking about all this quarterback madness, but how about some Built March Madness and the Built March Madness bracket, which has been here all month long, where you can vote for your favorite Built Bars or your favorite Built Puffs, because now is your time to make your favorite the champion. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorite. We're in the midst of the Built 16. And if you watch Locked On Bucks or Locked On Commanders, you already know my vote has been in on a daily basis for the GOAT, which is lemon-dipped cheesecake puff, and you'll never tell me any different. If you want your favorite to win, then you need to go vote for that bar or that puff as well. And when you do vote for your favorite bar or puff, you're going to be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners are going to get a free box of Built Bar products. Not only that, but one of you is going to win a 12-month subscription to Built, where you're going to get amazing high-protein, low-fat, low-sugar, 100% chocolate-covered deliciousness delivered straight to your door. So run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now, vote for your favorite bar or puff, and pick up a box of them while you're there. You can vote every day in March like I am. So hop in, support your pick at Built.com. Built different.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily one-stop shop for all of the biggest stories around the National Football League. And to wrap up today's show, we're joined by the one, the only, the Bay Area legend, John Lund of the John Lund Unleashed Bay Area Sports Talk podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, which you can find wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. And you can follow John on Twitter at John Lund, L-U-N-D, Radio. John, it's the owners meeting. There's always a lot of interesting stuff. Today we got John Lynch talking about how Brock Purdy is the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to the quarterback battle in San Francisco. You cover the San Francisco 49ers very closely, have for a while. Is this just general manager speak to rile up the competition, or is there a real thread here to pull?
No, I think it's pretty well known that Brock Purdy. Now, here's the big caveat. It's not surprising you would say something like that. It's if healthy. So he's got a big brace on his arm. I don't know if you've seen a picture of him, but you can't throw with that brace on your arm. So what you've essentially got right here is, all right, he's going to be able to throw in about 12 weeks, is what John Lynch said today in Phoenix. That's around early June. Well, now you've got 3 more months of throwing to get yourself. You haven't thrown at all. You've been in a brace. We all know how that works. You got off season, OTAs, all these different things. Well, okay, so now we're talking into September. I mean, he had the surgery on March 10th, did Brock Purdy. 6 months from that point is September 10th or the first Sunday of the NFL season. So you're going to tell me that John Lynch just told us that Brock Purdy's going to start, but he's not going to throw really meaningful passes. He's not going to do what all the quarterbacks do, take them to some beach or go to Phoenix or San Diego or Miami or whatever, throw with these guys. It's just it's an interesting situation, but here's where Trey Lance has an opportunity. And I don't know if you guys tell me, can you win a job if you were just in OTAs and throwing with guys, but you didn't play in a game? Because Trey Lance hasn't looked good in games. He tried to take control of the team, but the problem with Trey Lance is it's a team in a Super Bowl window who doesn't have a quarterback in a Super Bowl window. Brock Purdy's the closest they have. I don't really want to hear anything about Sam Darnold. That's where I think he was coach speaking that thing up, talking about Sam Darnold. We've seen Sam Darnold. You're in the same division as Sam Darnold was. Sam Darnold did not start for the San Francisco 49ers. So this thing comes down to, will Brock Purdy be ready? Not whether he's number one. If he's healthy, it's not even a competition. Not in my opinion, but John Lynch runs the show, Kyle Shanahan. But it's will Brock Purdy be healthy? That's the big question.
Yeah, and you bring up a lot of interesting things. Trey Lance is someone that obviously kind of the impact on his career that this entire last year of football is going to have. Towards the end of the regular season, into the playoffs, a lot of people were talking about whether or not Trey Lance would be available for trade this offseason because of everything that Brock Purdy had done. And then obviously the playoff injury comes, and now this whole thing is kind of thrown up in the air as kind of we'll see what lands and what sticks and all that. Do you think that, so I mean, it doesn't really sound like you do, but do you think Trey Lance has an opportunity because of this injury to resurrect his reputation, or do you think that he sticks with the 49ers more so as an emergency? The glass may already be broken. We might as well inflate this thing that we've got and see if we can just stay afloat until Brock can come back.
Well, the problem is that they're in a Super Bowl window, so they're not in a situation like, I mean, take any of these teams to the top of the draft. Carolina, number one, they're just going to play the quarterback, right? Houston at number two, they're just going to play the quarterback. Indianapolis, maybe middle of the road. Maybe they'd like somebody that's more ready to play. I don't know that they would take an Anthony Richardson, for example. But the problem with the 49ers is they thought, I know this for a fact, they thought they were going to win the Super Bowl last year. Going into Philadelphia, they thought they were going to win that game. They thought that was the closest, and I'm talking about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and their tenure. That was the closest. That was the best team they had to win a Super Bowl. So then would it make sense to put Trey Lance into that situation? He's going into his third year, but he's completely unproven. Went to North Dakota State through 319 passes at a lower division school. They just can't trust him, and I've seen him in practice as well, and I know why. And a lot of people got mad that he was running as much as he was, which led to his injury, but that's what they trust him to do. Now Brock Purdy comes in, and I wouldn't automatically give him the keys to the kingdom because he started and he's won a lot of those games, but it's 8 games nonetheless. In the playoff game, Dallas gave him trouble. He wanted to leak out left. He still doesn't step up into the pocket. There's things he doesn't do well, and he's not going to get an entire offseason. I mean, I would ask you guys, would you make a guy the unquestioned starter if he was what's Brock Purdy, the 20th best quarterback in the league? 22? I don't know. That range. And so, here it's like, yeah, Brock Purdy, but it's like, well, he's kind of to me, maybe a younger Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if he's even that. But back to your question on Trey Lance, John Lynch did say in Phoenix today something interesting. He was asked directly, would you trade Trey Lance? And he said, well, we listened to everything, but then we like Trey to be on the team. But maybe that's what they think. They like Sam Darnold. I'm not saying they don't. I don't believe in Sam Darnold because I've seen him play just like you guys have. But Kyle Shanahan has liked him a lot since 2018. They didn't draft him because they already had Jimmy Garoppolo. But would they trade Trey Lance? I think they might. But then you're talking about what, 25 cents on the dollar?
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of value there for sure. Because you've watched this so closely over the course of those 8 games, there's a lot of folks that have sort of looked at Brock Purdy and maybe docked him some points because of the Kyle Shanahan system, because of the weapons that are there on the offense in San Francisco. But you kind of just highlighted a little bit of Trey Lance's inability to be able to produce as a passer in that same offense. So does Brock Purdy deserve to kind of have the grade curved a little bit, or because of the system and the Shanahan system, or is he there executing the way that they want him to execute?
No, they really like Brock Purdy, and the reason they do is the exact opposite of what Trey Lance is. So Trey Lance, to this point, maybe around here, everybody thinks, oh, maybe he can be Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts put in a lot of time. Jalen Hurts went to Alabama, then Oklahoma. This guy was at North Dakota State, didn't throw it a lot. So I don't think that's an apt comparison, but they do want him to be that, which is the running and the throwing. But the problem with Lance is he doesn't see it fast enough yet. Now, Brock Purdy's the complete opposite. He doesn't have the physical gifts that Trey Lance has, but he sees it. He gets it to the right people. And for Kyle Shanahan, that's massive. Like you said, he's kind of a wizard. And now he adds Christian McCaffrey, and he's got George Kittle and Ayuk and Debo, and he's got all these guys. And really in this offense, as you're kind of alluding to, get it to the right guy at the right time. Don't make mistakes. The ball's kind of come out. These guys will do the work for you, man. You just got to move it around. And that's what Kyle likes about him. That's what Trey Lance doesn't do. So for all the physical gifts that we fall in love with, and we're going to at the draft again with Anthony Richardson and all these guys like, oh, Brock Purdy was so good. Go get Anthony Richardson. It's like, sense, right? So the gifts that Trey has, but he doesn't have what Purdy does, which is he gets it to the right guy at the right time, which is why the 49ers like him. So yeah, as you said, I don't know if I would dock him. It's just that that's what Kyle wants. And that's what Trey Lance can't give him. And to get to that point, Trey Lance would have to play for a year because you're not going to sit there and learn. Who learned? Like, I've watched it. I got to play. And that's the conundrum that they find themselves in because at some point, Trey Lance has got to play. But if you're a Super Bowl contender, they did that last year and they gave him an opportunity. He got 1.5 games in and got hurt. So he hasn't had the opportunity, but I don't know how he gets it.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of questions. You have one quarterback that seems to have at least maybe enough tools to get you where you're trying to go, but we don't know if he's going to be able to play again. Trey Lance has kind of proven that he doesn't necessarily have all the tools, and he's the only guy you really have to play Sam Darnold. I think we're all on the same page. I'm not sure what Kyle Shanahan, his page might be different, but the question now is, so we've got the first part of the offseason done. The first wave of free agency is done. The NFL draft is the next big event. So if you're in the Super Bowl window and you're looking at this team from an organizational standpoint, and you look at that situation and say, the guy we want, it may not be available. The guy we don't really want is the only guy available. How do you proceed into April and then even to the end of April and keep this team in the Super Bowl window and try to capitalize on that opportunity?
Well, I mean, from a quarterback standpoint, I think they hold their breath on Purdy and the injury. And then Sam Darnold is basically an insurance policy. I don't love it, but that's the insurance policy. So that's the biggest position. They went out and they got Javon Hargrave, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a story on that, on Javon Hargrave. And I just had him on my show a couple of days ago. But first thing he mentioned was California taxes, and they do suck. But the number one thing that they had to do was because John Lynch had we were just talking about GM speak. That's how we started talking here. Mm-hmm. Well, John Lynch came out right after the season and he said, are you going to have any big expenditures? Are you going to be this isn't a first day free agency team with a funny money, right?
Right. They
went to Jed York, their owner, and they said, look, to get back to 2019 when we went to the Super Bowl with that dominant defensive line, we've got to get a guy. We got to get a big horse up front. And they told him Javon Hargrave's our guy. Now let's back this up for a second. They traded DeForest Buckner to the Colts after 2019 because they couldn't afford he and Eric Armstead both. They were both up for contracts. They chose to keep Armstead, sign him, and trade Buckner. With that pick they got from the Colts, which was 13, they traded with the Bucs. It ended up being 14. They took Javon Kinlaw. He's been a complete and utter bust.
Yeah.
He's got bad knees. So what did they have to do? They had to go out and they gave Hargrave a 4-year, $84 million contract, the exact to the dime contract they wouldn't give Buckner. So sometimes as an organization, everybody's like, oh, the 49ers are great. And I'm not saying they're not. But what I'm saying is you make a mistake in the good organizations. Javon Kinlaw's played 2 years now. The good organizations say we screwed up. They went to the owner and said, can you literally, and people forget this, do you have the money to give this guy? Because you got to put it in escrow. So you got to put the money in. Some teams don't have the cash to pay these guys. So they went to Jed York, the owner, and said, we need the cash. It's like going to mom, right? Can we have some money? Well, they did. And he had the cash. He said, yep, we're all in. And that's what I'm talking about a Super Bowl contender. But they lost a ton of depth. So they get Hargrave, and that's great. They lost a bunch of D-line depth. They lost Emmanuel Mosley coming off the injury. They lost Jimmy Ward. They lost Azeez Al-Shire. Mm-hmm. They lost Mike McGlinchey. They lost Daniel Brunskill, which is an underrated offensive line piece. You guys know this. You can play all over the offensive line. They lost a lot of guys. So as you look at the NFC, you say, okay, Philly lost guys. Nobody really is concentrating on as much on the 49ers because they got Hargrave. That's great. But I can't sit here today and tell you guys that they're a better team than they were last year going into the NFC Championship game because the guys get hurt. And right now, they don't have enough depth.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like injuries are a mystery or a stranger to the San Francisco 49ers, of course. You can get this and much more from John Lund every day over at John Lund Unleash. All of your Bay Area sports talk in one place. Not only the 49ers, but you've got, the Athletics, the Giants, you've got the Golden State Warriors. Getting it all done over at John Lund Unleash, which you can subscribe or follow for free today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. John, we appreciate you so much for coming through, man. Can't wait to see how the San Francisco 49ers fare in 2023.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Locked On NFL here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and for making us your first listen today and every day. Tomorrow, James and Tony will be here with you to get you ready for everything else going on around free agency. It doesn't seem like any quarterback's going to be on the move anytime soon, but whatever news is there, you know that they're going to be breaking down for you. For your second listen today, make sure you're also checking out Locked On NFL Scouting. Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, the draft dudes, get you everything you need to know about what it takes to build a successful franchise in today's game in the NFL. You can subscribe and follow for free wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss the latest episodes. For David Harrison at dharrison82, I am Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola, Nola. We appreciate you very much for being here with us and for making us a part of your day here on the Locked On Podcast Network and with Locked On NFL, your team every day.